Good afternoon and welcome to BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. It's the 23rd of November and we have our regular Thursday guest, David Kuo, founder of the Smart Investor, coming to us out of Singapore. David, selamat tengah hari. Great to have you as always on the show.
Selamat tengah hari, Brian. Apa kabar?
Bye-bye. Now, before we get your insights, David, let's take a look and see how the numbers stack up across the region. We're going to start with Singapore. The Straits Times Index is down marginally. It's down 0.11%. If you look across the region, Bursa Malaysia is down 0.23%. Shanghai is up 0.18%. The ASX All Ordinaries is down 0.6%. The Nikkei is up 0.24%. The Hang Seng is down 0.44%. And rounding up the numbers, we've got the Kospi, which is down 0.05%. David, your view on market performance in the first half of the day?
Right. Pretty flat, the market. So my initial thought is, are we sure it's Thanksgiving or is it Pancake Day? Yeah, because markets are certainly as flat as a pancake at the moment. And I think the clue really is it's Thanksgiving over in America. So American markets are closed. So there is very little guidance for investors and traders over here. And everybody's just sitting on their hands and maybe just tucking into a turkey somewhere. Hopefully that turkey is not the shares that you've actually bought, but something that is juicy and succulent. But as far as markets are concerned, yeah, it was a pretty good day over in America last night. Markets rallied on all three exchanges, and you would have thought that there would be some follow through today over in Asia, but sadly no. So I think we just have to sort of take it as it is, and then wait for things to come back again on Friday.
Now, David, now we're in the topic of America. Bond yields have pulled back sharply. We're now at below 4.4% for US Treasuries from a high of 5%. Are we stuck? And so suddenly Treasury bond T-bills don't look as attractive as they used to just a few weeks ago. Is it time to pile back into equities again?
Well, I think there were a certain number of people that sort of locked in on those sort of 5% yields, and they thought, that was going to be pretty good. And as far as those people are concerned, yes, it is, because we're actually seeing bond yields coming back down because the market believes for some reason that the Federal Reserve may start cutting interest rates in 2024. Whether it is in the early part of 2024 or the latter part of 2024, they think that maybe interest rates have kind of peaked at the moment. But if you listen to what the Federal Reserve has said, they said interest rates are going to remain higher for longer. And I think we're going to be seeing these kind of interest rates for a longer period of time. Whether it's good to go into bonds or not is a question that people need to ask, and they have to examine their own risk tolerance. Do you want a sustainable, a constant return on your investments and then get your capital back at the end of 10 years? If you're that kind of investor, then yeah, sort of lock into those yields. But if you're somebody who believes that I want rising income streams, then as far as those people are concerned, you'd actually sort of need to look into other parts of the market. And in my case, it's looking for income shares that are able to raise their dividends over time. And that is my preference. And as far as interest rates are concerned, Brian, I don't really sort of pay that much attention because I'm constantly in the market. I bought some shares early part of this week simply because I need to buy shares, Brian. I need the income. And so whether the market is high, whether the market is low, it doesn't make any difference to me. I'm always in the market, always buying shares. And probably tomorrow I'll go back in and buy some more shares, Brian.
Now, David, I want to stay focused on America and talk about the APEC summit and the meeting of President Xi and Joe Biden. A lot of positive noise out, particularly from the China camp. Is China now investable after that meeting? And I want to also draw the audience attention, and they can check this out at your website at the Smart Investor. You had an op-ed piece around investing in China.
Yeah, I mean, China is a bit of a conundrum. And if we have a look at the APEC meeting, I found it to be a bit disappointing because they talked about a number of topics. They talked about communication. They talked about military communications. And they also talked about fentanyl, which is actually a big problem over in America. But they didn't talk about the important things. And we all know what the important issues are. And they didn't actually sort of talk about any of that because I think, that was a kind of no-go area as far as the two sides are concerned. And so when you have a look at China, on the one hand, I think Xi Jinping's President Xi's visit to America was a charm offensive to try and sort of get people to start thinking about bringing investments back into China again. But I want to draw your attention. This is a Thursday, by the way. It's not English Literature Day, but I would actually draw your attention to uh, a uh, a poem by Mary Howard that was written nearly 200 years ago, and it's a poem about a spider and a fly, and the first two lines go something like this: "Will you walk into my parlor?" said the spider to the fly. "'Tis the prettiest parlor that you ever may spy." And it's about a spider that's trying to attract a fly into its parlor, into its web. And I don't need to tell you that things didn't end well for the spider, for the fly. In the end, it met a very watery end, despite its first of all its apprehensions, and then secondly, the spider just kept on trying to convince the fly that it was pretty and it needed to come into the parlor and have a look at itself in the mirror and how beautiful it was in this parlor. But anyway, the fly dies in the end. Okay, it's very, very sad for a Thursday afternoon. But the point really is that you have a look at China. It's a huge market, and you cannot ignore a market that size. So, is it uninvestable? I think the answer is you need to be very cautious, and it is better to somehow pass on the risk of investing in China to someone else. And my preferred way of investing in China is to look at companies that have exposure to China. So companies like Coca-Cola, McDonald's, PepsiCo, I mean, all these companies have exposure to China. So I'm not actually taking the risk myself. I'm passing the risk on to somebody else or some management that has better knowledge of China. So that's one way of playing it. And the other way of doing it is to say, yeah, I want to invest in some Chinese companies, but you certainly don't want to jump in with both feet. So you put them into your portfolio and just assign a smaller percentage of your portfolio to these kind of companies, and not simply say, I'm betting the farm on this company in China that it will do well. Because I think if you do that, you'll end up probably in the same place as the poor old fly in the spider's trap.
So, David, the old adage about investing: diversification, diversification, diversification.
Absolutely.
Now, still on America, can you give us some insights or any sort of juicy snippets around the circus that is OpenAI? So it looks like the founder Sam Altman is been rehired at OpenAI. So this drama has unfolded over the last week, since over the weekend. What's the latest on this, David? And what are your thoughts on this whole exercise?
Well, I think there's a couple of things here. I think the first one is that OpenAI and Sam Altman are inextricably linked. And just simply for the board to fire Sam Altman and to dismiss him from the company is not going to solve whatever problem that was actually there in the first place. And so what has happened now is that it seems that Sam Altman will be rejoining OpenAI as the CEO. There will be a new board of directors, and some of those directors that were there previously have been ousted. Now, the big question is, why was he fired in the first place? And until today, we still don't know why he was actually fired. So,
Exactly.
so if we don't know why he was fired, we don't know why he was actually rehired. And so it looks as though nothing has actually changed over this past week, but things have changed. And there is a report out at the moment on Reuters that seems to suggest that the research team at OpenAI discovered something about the capabilities of OpenAI, which they said threatened humanity. And these researchers wrote a letter to the board, and the board looked at the letter, looked at the research, and then went, oh my goodness, maybe Sam Altman hasn't been open and frank about what OpenAI or what ChatGPT or OpenAI is capable of doing. And their immediate response was to actually pull the trigger first and fire Sam Altman. then you actually discovered that firing him doesn't actually solve the problem, because all that will happen is that Sam Altman will take this research and go somewhere else with it. So isn't it better, to keep him inside OpenAI and then try and restrict what they do? But what seems to be at the nub of the problem is that OpenAI is more powerful than any of us ever imagined. And this piece of research has shown that maybe OpenAI is capable of doing some things that could be actually quite threatening. On a wider scale, Brian, I know we're running out of time, but on a wider scale, there is always this conflict that investors have between um, what is moral and what you actually want as an investor. As an investor, you want profit, but at the same time, you want the profit to be made properly. And if we open up the argument, if we open up the discussion and say, let's forget about OpenAI at the moment and have a look at, say, oil companies. You invest in an oil company, what do you want? You want profit, you want dividends, you want cash
Mhm.
flow. And at the same time, you know that what they are doing is actually destroying the planet and is actually raising the temperature of the earth to levels that we haven't seen before. And so what do you do? What do you do as an investor? And this is something that people have to argue with themselves. So when you have an opportunity, go into your bathroom, look in the mirror, and argue with yourself as to what you actually want. Do you want profit, or do you want a better place to live in? And that, I think, is the same issue with OpenAI. Do we want the capability of OpenAI to do certain things? So what happens if OpenAI were to ask this question, or to come up with a conclusion that we humans are actually not needed on this planet anymore, and that OpenAI will do everything possible to destroy us as a species, yeah, because we are actually bad for the planet? What do you do then? So I leave that hanging, Brian.
And on that note, David, we all think back to a movie that, if we're old enough, that question was actually answered when the machines became self-aware. I'll leave us on that. David, thank you very much for your insights. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving.
Now, we've been speaking to David Kuo, founder of the Smart Investor out of Singapore, and this has been BizTech's Asian Midday Market Watch. I'm Brian Fernandez. Check out this show on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks a lot for tuning in.